So, Peter, there's so the mind creates problems, right? Or thinking creates problems that convinces itself as being problems, right? This sort of this can have sort of physical ramifications, right? Can cause illness, right? Like psychosomatic.
No, it's not causal.
Okay, well, okay.
It's synchronistic.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Everything happens together. It's nothing doesn't cause something else.
Okay. I was just I was thinking of what I was trying to get to as it seems like a distinction between different types of healers, right? So I just came back from this energy healing workshop thing, right? So I've been thinking a little bit about this. So there's people like Pino, and we've talked before about how he has certain effects, or you can feel his, or you felt his energy very strongly, and then you've talked before also about like hypnotism, right? And so maybe other types of healers, there might be some sort of healing effect or seeming healing that happens in relation to their working with someone, but it's more a matter of hypnosis, right? Can we say that?
There's no such thing as healing. It's synchronistic.
Okay.
In other words, something's not causing something else.
Oh.
So suppose you go and see the healer, and suppose the healer does something, and suppose something happens that you attribute to that whole event. That entire event, that entire chain of events is being caused by radiance. There's nothing within that that's causing anything else within that. It's like if you're in a dream and you shoot a gun at somebody and the bullet hits them and they drop dead, you didn't kill them with a bullet. You didn't kill them with a gun. The dream did everything. The dream puts you there, it puts the gun there, it puts the bullet there, it puts the event there. And there's no actual causality between the seeming, components of that.
And no individual action.
Well, saying no individual action is an oversimplification. There may be what's qualifiable as individual action, but is not anything other than radiant presence. Nothing is negated, but it's not what you think it is.
And we can't talk about qualitative shifts in a seeming state, or
well, there's nothing but qualitative shifts in seeming states.
I'm thinking about like noticing noticing sort of practice, or yeah, and I was trying to relate that to like more programmatic forms of like spiritual practice, right? So there's so like in Buddhism, for instance, there's like the metta practice where you do all this loving kindness, and you do all these things sort of consciously, subjectively to try to open your heart space, right? Whatever that is, right? We can talk about that as just a sort of a sort of noticing practice going on there.
No,
No?
because you're doing something to try to achieve something. Noticing doesn't achieve anything.
That's right.
Noticing, you're just seeing what is the case, what is intrinsically the case, inalienably the case. Noticing is kind of a joke because noticing really consists of noticing that there's nothing but.
But, yes.
But for people who think in terms of doing things, it can be a potentially useful trick. But it's self-defeating. Noticing defeats the need to notice because you discover there's nothing but noticing. So you don't need to do it. Noticing reveals the inclusive the absolutely inclusive field of synchronicity, which is radiant presence. And any and all event or participation or action or achievement or mal-achievement or whatever is nothing other than spin doctoring of that actuality. And of course, like all spin doctoring, it doesn't actually do anything.
Well, until one is at the point of realizing this about noticing that noticing is happening all the time.
Sorry.
Oh, weirdo.
He's trying to catch
If you hold that up to the microphone here, then it will have an endless loop of grabbing.
That'd be cool.
Okay, so until one notices that, or fully realizes this fact about noticing happening all the time, right? It's useful to try to notice.
No, it may or may not be useful. It's actually probably not useful because it's liable to be a distraction because you think you're doing something, which is liable to distract you from noticing the fact that you're not. Or noticing the fact that doing itself is not actually doing. Nothing is useful, and what's useful is to see that fact.
There's this Qigong teacher I was taking class with, and he would say, do nothing, get everything. Right? It's the same sort of thing that you're talking about.
Maybe, sure.
Maybe.
Do nothing, get everything. Don't do nothing, get everything. Do everything, get everything. Do 13 3/4 things and get everything.
Okay, if that's the case, then well, why come hang out here and spiritualize?
Why? Why are you here?
Because it's entertaining.
Okay. There's your answer. Is that the true answer?
Oh, because it's compelling, because it's
What
really.
does compelling mean?
Um,
Let me tell you something. The reason you're here is because you're here. You're here because you happen to be here. That's the synchronicity. That, you know, the omnipresent, inclusive synchronicity. There's no sub portions that are interacting with each other that have a causal relationship or a relationship of reasonality or a relationship of why or why not. All of those kinds of things are pretense.
Charlie was saying last time that he thought that people just do what's the easiest thing.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking that people do what's easiest and most entertaining.
Sure, but again, spinning it as easy and or spinning it as entertaining is partializing something which is totally unresolvable. You can't say why. I mean, what does entertaining mean? It means you like it. What does like it mean?
And you're talking and offering teaching just because you're talking and offering teaching.
Of course. But there's no talking and there's no offering teaching. It's just this. And to call it that is to partialize it. Can't say what it is. Can't say what anything is. That doesn't negate anything. But partializing is a diminishment. Partializing is created by filtering an infinite complexity down to selectively abstracting certain imagined finite elements out of it and creating a set of those and then defining them as an entity or a condition or an activity or something. It's like if you walked out into the night sky, looked up and said, "Oh, I'm looking at the Big Dipper." And what else is there?
And you can't see everything in a flash.
You can, you do. You can't not see everything in a flash. This is a flash. Here's everything. Has it ever been any different?
Okay, and any interpretation is partializing.
Sure, you can say that. Interpretation, as interpretation is, but interpretation actually isn't a partializing, because interpretation actually is an interpretation, because interpretation actually is synchronistic radiant presence. It's just you might say, an energy event of the radiance, but which is what everything is. But it's not an energy event because there's no discreteness and there's no coherence of portions. It can be seen as that, but that in itself is interpreting, which doesn't diminish or add to the event itself, but it does not contribute to accuracy in terms of describing it.
So I have interpretations of what goes on here. Like the other day I was thinking about it seems like in the past it's like a game that I play where I get sort of riled up with some sort of concept concept production or structure or whatever, and then I bring it to you and see if you can get riled up by it, and you don't. That's like I keep on doing it over and over. Right? Is he going to
Sounds like fun.
No, but like it seems like I do that, and then I think, oh, well, it seems like I'm doing that, and maybe I can stop doing that, or maybe I don't need to do that.
Maybe. Why should you? Who cares what you do? What difference does it make what you do or don't do?
Uh-huh.
Doesn't matter what you do or what you don't do. The only powerful thing whatsoever is to see what it is.
I was also thinking about transmission. Like you talked about transmission before, and I was kind of thinking about transmission in that sort of context that I laid out. As you just sort of, you seeming to be very relaxed and not reactive to my reactions, and then it's almost like it's a sort of invitation into relaxation or something, right?
Come on in. Come on in. The water's fine.
Yeah.
Transmission is for you to figure out.
I just did. I told you my interpretation.
No. Interpretation is not figuring out. Since it's an interpretation, you know it's not that, because all interpretations are inaccurate. I'll give you a definition of transmission. How's that?
Okay.
Transmission is the discovery of flavor.
Discovery of flavor? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Now, what do you mean by flavor?
But again, that doesn't really help, because you still have to figure out what that means.
Well, so there's a sort of drifting away from, or moving away from, a fixation on interpretation, and then there's an attempt or a sort of experience of whatever, an attempt to parse experience in terms of energetic textures, right? or flavors or whatever. So I was thinking about that in terms of the workshop that I went to, right? Where they're wanting you to tune into this energy and whatever, channel energy and whatever, and it's such an ambiguous term, the energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because it's ambiguous, because it's more like a feeling that's less like, a logical thinking. It seems to be broader and more encompassing or more accurate.
suspect what they really want is for you to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Well, not just pay the bill, but sort of buy into their consensual reality that they create with each other.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of these things is more about looking for assurances to assure ourselves that everything's okay, we can handle it somehow, we can find a rule book and instructions so that whatever fear we have, I don't know, it's different for everybody, I suppose, I don't have any idea, but
Badly.
yeah. But that's it, there's no rule book, there's no set of steps to take, and you can't expect to be handed one, no matter how much you pay for the class.
You have spoken before about beginning stages of yoga
Sure.
or advanced stages of yoga, which indicates a path, although
Well, it may look like that.
it appears to be a path.
Well, successful yoga, the engagement in successful yoga is learning to tune into your intelligence. And one can learn that in any context whatsoever, in terms of what you think is happening, or what you think you're doing or not doing, and so on and so forth. Because intelligence is, well, it's a simple way to say it, but intelligence is omnipresent. There's never more or less intelligence, so it's simply available to notice that in any apparent context whatsoever. And so, a beginner at yoga tends probably to be approaching things in terms of context because that's what people are indoctrinated in. But if they're at all artful, if they have any native ability, they will fairly quickly stumble on the thread of intelligence, the thread of let's say, call it appreciating the subtleties, or certainly from the initial phases, it looks like appreciating the subtleties.
Is that intelligence a part of radiance?
They're one and the same.
Everything's part of radiance. Right?
They're one and the same. Intelligence is how everything happens. Intelligence is what does everything. The path of yoga can be defined as coming to appreciate the nature of the inherent intelligence. And appreciating its nature includes appreciating its functioning, which in no way is limited by any kind of process. It is, you could say it's the organizing power of reality, if you wanted to put it that way. And of course, since it's the organizing power of reality, it's also organizing the perception of that. intelligence is how reality perceives itself, as well as how reality displays itself. So it is, you might say, it's responsible for the functioning of both the subjective and the objective poles, metaphorically speaking. So any point of stumbling into beginning to notice that, it will reveal its nature to itself, because it is capable of apprehending its nature, because of course it is that nature, and of course the yogi's perception is that as well. So it's a kind of the yogi's experience collapses into, perhaps seemingly progressively, but collapses into its actual nature of the transcendental functioning and nature of the inherent intelligence.
That's totally impersonal.
Well, you could say it's impersonal, but it's also totally personal. It depends on what you mean by personal. It's not any personal as opposed to not personal. There's no opposition. It's everything. So, yeah, if you say there's no person, then it's totally impersonal. If you say there's nothing but person, then it's totally personal. It's everything. So, if there's a person, then it's that. So its nature is the reason there's confusion. Its nature is the reason why it doesn't recognize itself, and its nature is the way that it comes to recognize itself. So the entire path of yoga, delusion and discovery and realization are all consist of and affected by the inherent intelligence. So needless to say, it's rather a core principle.
In-house job.
Yeah, it's an in-house job. Nothing is formed out. No subcontracting.
Radiant subcontracting.
Is the intelligence like the Magus card?
Yes. Well, the Magus card indicates intelligence, but it's not. But intelligence isn't like it. Intelligence is everything. Intelligence is the organizing principle of reality. So anywhere there seems to be any organization whatsoever, that's actually inherent intelligence. So when you see experiential patterns, that's the inherent intelligence. When you see mental analysis, that's the inherent intelligence. When you see the functioning of parent bodies and physical systems, that's the inherent intelligence. When you see anything whatsoever, that's the inherent intelligence.
Like rhythms and cycles as well?
Oh, anything. And there's nothing excluded, so of course. Anything whatsoever that can be designated is inherent intelligence, and everything that can't be designated is also the inherent intelligence. So that kind of covers the gamut, I would say. It's the inherent intelligence that does noticing, and the inherent intelligence is what is noticed.
So intelligence, the intelligence, it's a lot more than just a distinction-making power. It's just part of it, right?
Sure, it makes all distinctions and it also removes all distinctions.
I was thinking about when you were saying noticing is, sort of ongoing, and it's funny. When I say that I'm noticing, or I mean I have that idea, noticing. That's what I'm noticing.
That's what there is to notice.
That's good.
That's what there is to notice.
Yeah, but yeah. So I mean, and I've said it other ways too. It's just sort of something that sort of slams me in my face, and
Noticing is noticing.
yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
I like daylight savings time.
Hmm?
I like daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Noticing is noticing distinctions and noticing lack of distinctions?
Noticing is noticing everything. And if you're going to qualify portions of the everything as being this, that, and the other, then you can do so, but it isn't actually that. It can be described in those terms inaccurately. Distinctions aren't really distinctions.
Distinctions are partializations.
Yeah, they're imaginary partializations of that which cannot be partialized. So they aren't actual partializations. If they were actual, then they would be, but they aren't. Because this is unresolvable, it cannot be partialized.
Liberation is discovering you don't have to figure anything out because it's all here, right?
Yeah, there's nothing to figure out because it's already what it is. It doesn't, it cannot become other than it is. But the perks consist of what it is.
As far as making a distinction between trying to do noticing and noticing, or doing something and not doing something, the sense of intentionality, would you say that's just kind of irrelevant?
Yes,
Okay.
completely irrelevant. And it doesn't need to be suppressed because the natural tendency, so long as it appears like that, may be to try to do things and to think you're doing things and so on and so forth, all of which is fine. The point, of course, is to see what that actually is as it's occurring and being held to be, however it's being held. Yeah. There's no partiality whatsoever in yoga. Yoga is always the whole, the full Monty, you might say, technical terms.
Technical.
So whatever seems to be present is obviously that, within that and consisting of that, because everything is within that and consisting of that. And what's interesting is not these, again, these seeming partialities, but that is what yoga is about. And the whole, the full field is always present. It's never diminished by what you may be fixating on or thinking is going on. That always occurs within the context of the totality, and the totality is never hidden. It's never obscured. So as a result, all these seeming partial actions and investments and all that are of no importance whatsoever. And the machinations of personality and all of that are of no importance whatsoever. And don't need to be suppressed. They don't need to be cleansed or purified or improved. And even if there's an obsession with trying to repress them or trying to purify them, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. Because again, that's just more seeming actions within the whole, which in no way affects the nature of the whole, which is sort of the point.
At least what I'm experiencing now is there's a sense of me over here and then the intelligence over here. And there's this sort of interplay. And it's like I'm like playing chess with the radiance or the intelligence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, sometimes I'll make a move and then the intelligence will make its move right away, and sometimes it'll take a long time and I'll get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
But that engagement and sort of conversation seems to move things along.
Sure, it's fine.
Yeah.
But the point is that the intelligence is playing its half of the game, but the intelligence is also playing your half of the game. And so that game again is just the seeming interactivity of that game is just a field of the intelligence dancing with itself, which is everything. But there's nothing wrong with it. If it seems to be like that, that's fine. Just you know, if you want to try and do anything, try and see the way in which whatever seems to be happening is also more and other than that, without trying to suppress it or without trying to get away from it or outside of it, because these sort of seeming structures and seeming dynamisms will have their own natural process of evolution and dissolving and morphing into something else. So it doesn't require any effort of trying to steer it. And even if there is effort to try and steer it, that itself is just more of the same.
Sometimes a particular aspect that I haven't noticed before kind of pops out, and then it'll go away, and then I'll think about it and try to notice that aspect again, and it won't work because it's artificial trying to.
Yeah, because no aspects actually have an inherent existence or an inherent nature as partialities. So that's why you can't repeat anything. You can't ever find you can't have an insight you had, you can't have it again. Because it wasn't what you thought it was. There's no it. Even if it presents as an it, that it is actually more and other than being that it. And so if you could find it and find it again, you wouldn't recognize it because it would be different.
you say seeing what this is, what is the what that you are referring to?
What can't be said? But it's the only what that there is.
Is it how it is, or
Well, what it is, and is how it is. And how it is what it is. It's not a noun or a verb. It's both and beyond nounness and beyond verbness. So you can start, it doesn't matter where your point of interface is. You know, look for the how, if you like, or look for the what. And if you are with that intelligently and with that openly, it will reveal the way in which it transcends your initial interface point of what you were, you know, holding it to be or positing it as in terms of the particular investigation.
and change in a relationship to it, or your involvement in it,
Mm-hmm.
your participation in a different way, because you're seeing what, as opposed to not seeing what. When you don't see what it is, then there's a different, it seems as if you're talking about a different participation or experience of what.
Yeah, but there's infinite different sort of perspectives or takes or experiences of what it is, and there's no final one, and that's another part of the aspect of what it is and how it is, that it doesn't have a final way that it is, doesn't have a final perspective, it doesn't have a final orientation to itself. And so in the course of it exploring itself, which is basically what your experience consists of, it will always be finding nearness and finding freshness and seeing different this and different that, because it's not like it's not gravitating to some final condition. The final condition is no final condition.
Right, not necessarily that you see anything final, but there is a change in relationship to experience.
Yeah.
In that we're used to conventionally identifying, among many things, but primarily a body-mind system.
Sure.
And it seems as if there's a significant difference when you are outside. You are no longer just strictly identified with that.
Sure.
And it's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what constitutes liberation. You're liberated from these partial perspectives, liberated from these limited self-identifications, and they reveal themselves to be untrue and imaginary, and you see the true condition, which is what this actually is, what you actually are, and you see it's both its unlimited nature as well as its independence. It doesn't exist dependent upon anything. So the body is dependent upon all kinds of things. It's dependent upon health, it's dependent upon an environment, it's dependent upon all kinds of things. But the body comes and goes, but this does not come and go, because this just depends only on itself. It bootstraps itself up transcendentally out of nothing, you might say. This is the Big Bang. And the feeling tone of seeing that that's what this is, that's what you are, has a very different implication than the feeling tone of, oh, I'm this body and it's aging and it gets sick and it's incomplete and it's very inefficient at functioning and so on and so forth.
How how is that different or is that different than a conventional knowing of it? Or can it be, is it known conventionally?
Well, there's no such thing as conventional. Conventional knowing of it is transcendental knowing of it, actually.
Well, while you're still partialized and identified in a partiality, is it still known in a way, or are we talking
Yes, it's
about
known.
something?
Reality is always known, but it's misinterpreted. The perspective is wrong, or let's say inaccurate. Reality is always known because it's impossible. There's nothing but reality to know. So anything that is known is actually reality. But the perspective of that there's me and then there's all this stuff I know versus there's just this infinite field of knowing, unresolvable knowing, and any me or anything is just abstracted within that field. It's a very different sort of implication.
It's without filters.
Yeah.
It's how it's.
Well, not necessarily without filters, but just seeing that filters are arbitrary. Filters aren't stuck. You're not stuck with a filter. You can adopt a filter. Filters come and go. They drift through. Perspectives drift through. And they're not wrong. They're not evil. They don't need to be suppressed. They're just the nature of how this is such that that's aspect of it. All of these infinite apparent partial perspectives continually implying themselves and morphing and drifting, but there is no true one. There's no final one, which is the final perspective is there is no final perspective. I mean, that's part of the implication of unresolvable. You can't get to the bottom of what this is because it has no bottom. You would just keep going forever, and it would eternally seem different because it's infinitely different than itself without ever departing from itself. I mean, that's part of the what. It's very peculiar. It's a very peculiar condition here.
Supersized.
It's precise. Oh, really small.
So there's a story that, okay, I'm going to get out of this perspective that I'm the person and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go into this other perspective. We are all one. And, so you're saying that's also untrue.
Yes.
Good. I never see that. I'm glad I quit looking for that shit.
Perspectives are arbitrary and there's no final perspective.
Yeah,
And seeing the perspectives as arbitrary is the important thing. Not getting out of one perspective to some better perspective. On the other hand, seeing that they are arbitrary enables you to navigate them and sort of dance with them a lot more freely. Perspectives are actually continually morphing and shifting because there's no stability whatsoever within form. But apparently rigid, stuck perspectives, identified perspectives, there's a pretense of actively recreating those so that they can seem to be constant. I'm me and I'm still me and I was me yesterday and I'm me now and I'm going to be me tomorrow. And that is a fantasy which has to be actively reinstated instant by instant because even the presence of that fantasy is no problem because it dissipates and morphs into, you space out instantly into something else. And so, and even in the face of that reinstatement, there's still a continual spacing out. So again, simply noticing that, it's not like you need to fix it. You need to not keep reinstating it. Just see how arbitrary it is and notice this continual deviation. Any perspective deviates from itself almost right away.
So when you say reality is always here, but your perspective is wrong, the wrong perspective would be clinging to
Yes,
certain.
the wrong perspective is that there is a perspective.
Yeah.
But there is no wrong perspective.
Absolutely, there's no wrong perspective,
Otherwise,
and no right perspective. Because,
it's just this.
yeah, because perspectives are just this. And when you see perspectives aren't things, they don't have the solidity and the coherence and the relevance they seem to have.
Can seem absolutely infinite.
And they are absolutely infinite.
Well up with just.
And so forth. You know, and it's actually really obvious and really noticeable. If you know, just look at your experience over the course of 30 seconds or something, and you'll just notice it. I mean, we're all total, complete, utter space cadets. You know, but it's possible to have a rigid pretense that we aren't, but that pretense has to be reinstated continuously.
Told you so.
You telling her she's a space cadet?
Well, everyone else.
Everybody else.
So where does that concept come from? That there's this state you arrive at and you stick in this, where you see that you're one with everything.
It's a sales pitch.
It's a sales pitch.
Well, yes and no. It's a kind of a gross oversimplification of actuality. Reality, only reality exists. So anything that exists is nothing other than reality. So clearly anything whatsoever is one with everything.
Mhm.
But saying it's one with everything is kind of, I mean, it's starting from a really flawed premise.
That you aren't.
Yeah, I mean, so again, it has a very confused implication. When you know, okay. Do I have time for this? Well, it's almost break time, so maybe after we get back from our dessert break, I'll go into this. It'll probably take about 10 or 15 minutes. There's a really cool thing I can present that will explain all what we're talking about pretty rigorously. But right now, why don't we have a 10 or 15 minute dessert break? So we'll be back in a short period of time, online people.
She's coming over tomorrow to watch. What's the name of the movie?
Guardians of the Galaxy, too.
What's the first word?
Guardians.
Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah.
For a half hour, I thought I had a start.
I'm intrigued by that pink plant.
Save the, save
Oh,
my
I noticed
dessert.
the plant.
Yes.
It's so pink. Looks pink. Green. No, look at the pink.
The sky.
Oh, there's a parrot in it. No wonder.
3 wooden parrots.
Oh,
There's what?
3 wooden parrots.
Oh, they were in, when there was a thing there, they were in there too.
When there was a thing there was a thing there.
Oh, Peter turned the camera around. Crafty dude. Oh. Need a hand? Oh, you're limping. You got a stiff knee or hip. Which is it?
Takes a while.
Yeah, no, I got the same, similar thing going. I get up and I have to go slowly. Oh, okay, all right. I'm breaking that.
Stephen Hanna, right? Okay, yeah, I know your name is Stephen, but I wasn't sure the same one I see on Facebook. I thought you were, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My alter ego.
No, I don't want to. Well, perhaps you should.
Plan any trips?
Jerry, I can do.
I think we're going to Alaska,
Oh, Alaska.
drive to Alaska.
Hmm,
Drive to Alaska?
that'd be fun. I did that a couple times.
Yeah.
Even when I was young, with my family, up the Alpine Highway. Wasn't paved then, it was gravel. It was really quite an adventure.
It's all paved now.
Yeah, it's paved now. No, that'd be a really fun trip.
And I don't mind if we don't make it all the way to Alaska. They can British Columbia.
Sure.
Well, of course.
So I should go to the way
But
back,
it is.
straight back to the store.
Ingredients at the bottom, yeah.
Near the cheese, I guess.
Question is what? He's avoiding it. Well. That's up to you. You can ignore the whole egg thing or you can do it. So when inspired you guys to come down? The weather's better up there right now, you know?
Yeah.
I've heard.
But tomorrow it's gonna be raining cats and dogs.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's over.
Saturday's gonna be nice here, but you'll be gone by then. Oh, well.
Unless I get stuck here and can't get on the flight.
Well, that can be arranged. We'll tie you down
I'm
to
a non-rev,
something.
so I'm very detached. Oh, couldn't get on. Okay, fine. Stay here another day.
That's right. We overbooked.
What is it?
Is it mushroom season in Seattle?
There's spring mushrooms coming up. The main one is the morel, looks like a little Christmas tree. That gives us a really good year for them too. There's lots of rain, lots of moisture. People, you like morels? Yeah, people are picking up old, shopping bags full of them.
Mushrooms have started showing up in the markets.
Mhm.
Got a nice mixed batch recently. It was very delicious.
There's a lot of magic mushrooms that grow up there, right?
Oh, yeah, we're famous for those.
You can get them here too.
Yeah, this year's gonna be a good year because all the rain. It has been kind of dry last couple of years, so it's been kind of sparse, but
Yeah.
this year it's gonna be
The
good.
West Marin must be fun hunting
Be
season
everywhere.
there now.
Are they red capped with the white spots?
No, those are different though. That's considered to be psychoactive, but I think they're sort of,
They're also specialized poisons.
yeah, I think you probably wish you hadn't eaten them if you
Oh, really?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, you don't want to try that.
I've never tried it.
Oh,
I
I
remember
had
this
somebody
story.
tried them and they didn't like them.
Yeah, they can have a really bad
They didn't
experience.
I mean, they had a very hallucinogenic time,
Mhm.
but it wasn't pleasant.
Right, exactly. Very, very hallucinogenic, but not pleasant.
But
Whereas the other one was
psilocybin
over.
is exactly the opposite.
Right,
It's not very hallucinogenic, but very pleasant.
yeah, we have these little ones, little tiny ones, little brown ones. But you gotta know them because they're right next to deadly ones.
yeah.
It looks very similar. If you're not trained, some people go out and grab a handful of them and don't look at them carefully, end up in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
You
So
could end up dead, actually.
you really could, yeah. You can
Trash
die
your
from that. You can
kidney.
die from those
Yeah.
amatoxins, they're called, really. It just, your liver just basically melts.
Don't you get rid if you cry?
Yeah, that's one of the signs, is they're small and it turns blue very fast, so
Yeah.
that's a real good indication.
The poisonous ones,
No, the good ones
all day.
of the type, and the ones that are poisonous
If
don't
it's
turn
blue, it's
at all.
for you.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
blue,
that's
it's
how
for
you remember.
If it's blue, it's really good.
That's why Krishna's neck is all blue, see?
That's right.
He was out in those cow pastures.
Who?
That's right.
Krishna,
Krishna.
he's out with
They were all tripping.
That's it. They
Jumping
were
around with those
tripping.
women out there with the cows. And they were popping up out of the cow patties.
I wondered about them.
Mhm.
So propy is actually a short for cow pie. Propy, cow pie.
What's that?
Propy is short for cow pie.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, there was some guy who was translating them all out. It was just like amazing to hear the whole story. It's all hidden back
Cow
in
pie,
there.
that's why you say propy.
Yeah,
Cow pie. Cow pie.
yeah, cow pie.
You too. Nerds. Marsha's watching. I don't know how she sent me a text or something, and then all of a sudden I said, hey.
Hi, Marsha.
She wants to come visit, she misses us.
She heard us talking about her. About her healing powers.
There you go. I talk to her sometimes. I miss her. When our conversation on the text started with, I wanted to find out the name of the town. The name of the town that they're near is Oakhurst. He's about 15 miles from the 70 South Gate in the Sierra foothills. She says she misses everybody.
Oh, we miss her too.
Yeah. She's listening on.
Or should I try to save myself?
Like that.
He ran back out and he did what it was. Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have kids?
And the dog.
Kids?
One daughter,
Oh, one daughter.
yeah,
Oh,
she's 32.
is she into this stuff at all?
No, no, she's doing yoga though.
She's in the aura.
She doesn't need to, she's got him.
You know, yoga
What a
is
nice
like,
heart.
Yoga's
She's doing
like-
yoga. She's
yoga's like an entry
doing
drug.
amazing things. She
Yes,
was
yoga's an
classes
entry drug.
and completely got involved with her
You're
anxiety.
doing Pilates.
Driving anxiety.
Oh, God, yes,
I
yes.
said, great, keep
You know,
doing
I mean,
that.
it's, they seem
Wow,
to be
what
doing
do you
Pilates. I hate
You taught her
Pilates.
how to do the breathing, you know?
I just hate
You
Pilates.
just connected right up to it. Stopped her anxiety or driving
I
anxiety.
think it's
just
very
like
good
that.
for people.
Wow,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
It's hard on your leg. Oh, God. Yeah, and I think most of the
I
instructors.
said, good,
don't
because I
really
still
know how
got
to
it. I can't get rid of it.
Try to just get people in general
Get
motion,
angry
you
at the
know, they
person
don't.
in front of you. God, what's this guy trying to do?
Teachers are gonna come back.
Well, you should
Become
do
a
some
very
yoga.
popular thing, so there's.
Yeah, she's
time
doing yoga
doesn't
now.
Oh, you should do some yoga.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta ask her how she does it.
What's that?
It's just a trick she learned somehow.
What's that?
How to get over her driving anxiety, totally.
Oh, yeah, I got over anxiety of flying. It's nothing, you know, took me a while.
Just go to sleep, right?
No, no, no. It's interesting. I can't sleep. That's a very polite bell.
To get you a big old cowbell.
I know, clonk, clonk, clonk. Bell has rung. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, now the secret of the universe will be revealed to us.
Oh, goodness. So glad
So, say everything's made of reality. Okay, cool. In a certain sense, that's obvious, but I mean, it's in another sense, it's abstract. And to say everything's made of reality is a supremely concrete fact. And I can illustrate the way in which that's so a little more concrete and a little more specifically than just sort of saying it as a philosophical proposition. Suppose you have some wood. Okay, we got a bunch of wood here. Now you take the wood and you carve it into a table. Now you've got a table. Now suppose you're a really good carver and you take the wood and you carve it into all sorts of little wooden gears and levers and stuff, and you build a little clock, and the clock works. And now you've got a clock. So you've got a table, you've got a clock, you've got a pile of wood. Now, if you take the pile of wood and you grind it up, pulverize it till it's wood dust. You take the table, pulverize it till it's dust. You take the clock, pulverize it till it's dust. And you put those three piles on the floor. You've got three piles of exactly the same thing. Where'd the clock go? Where'd the table go? Now, computer, let's get a little more complicated. So a computer, here's this really intricate, state-of-the-art machine device. So it's basically a complex juxtaposition of bits of metal and plastic, types of plastic, let's just say, resins, whatever. So suppose you got all the raw materials, suppose you got all the metals that the computer, that they used to make the computer, just, it's chunks of the metal, chunks of the plastic that they use, and so on and so forth. And you just have them sitting there, and then here you got your computer. Now, if you take all those raw materials, the metal and the plastic, and you grind it into powder and put it in the pile on the floor, take the computer, grind it into powder, put it in the pile on the floor, you have two piles of exactly the same thing. Where'd the computer go? Where's the computer? Huh?
At Best Buy.
Yeah, well. Now, let's go back. Let's go back to our wood. So we have this sophisticated clock. We have this table, and we have this pile of logs, right? That are basically exactly the same thing, even though they look very different, but in actuality, they're exactly the same thing. They're made of the same thing. There's nothing added to one to make it something more than the other. They're exactly the same thing. Now, wood. So where does wood come from? Well, wood is, before there was a tree, there was a seed. Now the seed sprouts and there's a little sapling. So how does that turn into wood? Well, basically, there's all sorts of chemicals, minerals and stuff that are dissolved in the soil, in the groundwater, that get sucked up into the seed and into the sapling, which, and because of the DNA in the sapling, these minerals get compounded and compiled with each other chemically, and they turn into wood. So if you took the wood and deconstructed it and extracted the minerals from it, and you had the minerals themselves, pile of the minerals on the ground, pile of the deconstructed wood on the ground, you'd have two piles of the same thing again. So where'd the wood go? Now it's just these mineral chemicals. So then take it a few steps up. So you've got the clock, you've got the table, you've got the wood, and all of it is just these basically composite of minerals. Okay, what are the minerals made of? Well, the minerals are made of molecules and atoms. What are the atoms made of? So on and so forth. So you look and see, same way, where did they come from? How did this mineral, how is iron iron? How did iron become iron? Well, iron is iron because there was a star that exploded, and there were energetic events within that explosion of the star that caused various subatomic particles, subatomic little energy fluxes, to interact with each other in a certain dynamic way that formed an iron atom. So when you look at the iron, all you're really looking at is atoms and protons and neutrons. So, okay, cool. So same with the wood. So you got the wood, you got the clock, you got the table, you got the pile of wood, you got the pile of sawdust, you got the minerals, the pile of minerals that that's made of, and then the pile of minerals is actually just subatomic particles. Now, where do the subatomic particles come from? Well, it's very interesting. Where do they come from? This question, there's not very solid theories, but there's a lot of very advanced theories in modern physics. So basically, these subatomic particles are abstracted out of the 0 point by relativity, by positive and negative. So 0 can turn into positive and negative, can turn into matter and antimatter, and then you have matter sitting there, whereas the matter and antimatter essentially cancel each other out and become 0. So you started with 0. So again, let's suppose this is all looking at it very materialistically. This is a sort of a materialistic approach. So here's this nice wooden clock, carved clock, and it goes through this product of this line of deconstruction, and you end up with nothing. And there's nothing there but that, and then all of the progressive seeming layers of elaboration that go into forming the progressively elaborate structural aspects of these materials are just implicit in the nature of that. So you're looking at nothing all the time. You're literally physically looking at nothing. Well, this whole argument depends upon a materialistic point of view. It supposes that looking at things structurally in terms of the objective existence of matter. Everything's made up of matter and so on. Now, let's look at it subjectively. So, take your field of vision. So what do you see right now? God, got the list you could make of what. I see a light, I see people, I see a brown shirt, I see a black sweater, I see a computer, I see the left side of the computer, I see the right side of the computer, I see, this key and that key. I mean, I can make a list that was, took up 2 encyclopedias of everything that's present in my field of vision right now. Okay, so here's all of that. What's it made of? Well, it's made of vision. It's made of light appearing in the field of vision. I close my eyes and it all disappears at once. So I open my eyes, and what appears when I open my eyes? Light. And then all of these supposed variety of things are nothing other than light. They're made of light, or let's say made of vision. Saying that light assumes a materialist bias that vision is a product of light hitting the retinas and so on and so forth. Let's forget all that and just suppose this is just a dream, a projection. But still in all, there's a presence of what you can call the field of vision. And the substance of it is all that is present. That's enough. So you see that if you look at what the elaborations are made of, they're actually made of the substance converges and converges and converges into unity and ultimately into unresolvability, which can be called nothing. No matter how you look at it, if you look at it subjectively or you look at it objectively, materialistically. So, then that's reality. This is what reality is. Reality is this. That is what everything is made of. Now, can you find anything that's not like that? It can't be found. There's just this one system that presents itself with an infinite degree of apparent variety, but all the variety, if you look at it, turns out to be made of the same thing. So when you say everything is reality or it's all one, it's not just a philosophical position. It's actually the substantial truth. It's concrete. What is here concretely is one thing that by its very nature can assume these guises of infinite elaboration. But it's elaborations of one thing, within one thing, consisting of one thing.
Does this apply to an idea?
Sure. Again, you can look at that subjectively or objectively. You can look at it materialistically and say, well, an idea is a biochemical event in the brain and blah, blah, and then you're off and running. And well, that's because of the neurons and the state of the blood nutrients and so on and so forth. And well, what are those made of? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay.
Or you can look at it subjectively and well, here's the idea, what's it made of? It's made of mind energy. I mean, God knows what it's made of. But again, you go look, the idea doesn't have any autonomy. It's a presentation of some substance, and that substance may be an elaboration of some more primal substance and so on and so forth, until you get to unresolvability. It applies to any structure that exists. It's made of something, or how could it appear? And if you look at okay, great. So what is it made of? Because the basic human orientation is to go to the structure, go to the elaboration, go to the complexity. But complexity is made of simplicity. There's a very powerful way of putting this. that it's probably easiest to see in the wood example. If we let's just take our clock and our table and our pile of wood. So the pile of wood is simplicity. Then you carve it up into a table, it's more complex. Carve it up into a clock. Let's say it's a really elaborate clock that shows the phases of the moon and the time zones and the planets moving. I mean, this is some of the most spectacular clock in the world. The guy's just a total anal genius carver, spent his whole life doing this. So here's this intricate clock, very, very complex. And yet all of that complexity is just the simplicity. The complexity is the simplicity. It's not something that comes from the simplicity. It consists of nothing other than the simplicity. The simplicity has not been taken, the wood has not been taken out of being wood. It's just wood that is in a complex patterning. So complexity is actually simplicity. Only simplicity exists. You know, I think that the point of this is to counter the sort of knee-jerk assumption that sure, there's simplicity and there's complexity, and they're complexly interrelated, but the complexity actually exists as complexity, and the simplicity exists as simplicity. You know, whereas in actuality, the complexity doesn't really exist as anything other than the simplicity itself. Nothing has been added to it. Or another way you might put it is Michelangelo looking at a block of marble. Here's this block of marble. So what could he carve? He could carve any damn thing he wanted, but it would just be marble. You know, little David, or some shoddily made stone for building a road. What's the difference? It's the same thing. So this points out that the root principle is the only principle, and the elaborations are just the root principle itself. They're not. The elaborations are based on the root principle. They are the root principle. So here's this. Whether you look at it materialistically. So in the materialistic example of the, you know, you deconstruct things and you get down to, you know, molecules and atoms and subatomic particles, and finally the primal, you know, apparition of these energies out of nothingness in the Big Bang or whatever. That's radiant presence. And when you take that radiant presence and you build it up and you add the atoms, you add the subatomic particles and they become atoms, you add the atoms, they become molecules, you add the molecules, they become elements, and then the elements are sucked up into plants and turned into wood and cotton and things like that, and all these elaborate forms are built out. But it has never become anything more than the radiance it started with. It's just that's radiance that is presenting in these different shapes, in these different contexts. "15 minutes.
Jeff says, okay, atoms and molecules, cool for sure, but is the Earth flat or what? Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff always cuts to the essence.
Yes, it does.
How many people are watching?
Right this moment, there's 12 people.
It says 12, but,
Yeah,
that are totally sucked on.
it started out.
The computers are on, they left the room doing
I
something
went
more
and shared it
interesting.
on.
Okay, out getting a beer.
Groups of people, and sometimes they see that, I know. Some of the ones in Vancouver.
But think of all the thousands of people that are going to see this over the next 100 years as it's immortalized in this digital file.
Wowie.
One day this file will be played and displays over altars. Thousands of hushed devotees in awe.
Once upon a time in a land.
Yes, and they'll make up all kinds of stories and.
There was a bunch of lunatics.
Lunatics.
I think you self-inoculated there.
God, I hope so.
Yes. Good point.
So what you do when we ask a question is to grind that question into sawdust.
I don't need to. It already is sawdust. Nothing to grind.
So the answer, right?
Well, the answer is sawdust. The answer is always radiant presence.
What was sort of interesting, during this, the whole rap was, I sort of follow along and you're grinding stuff down and everything, and, a cloth, a computer table. But, so I see the pile, but also then, I don't know, I guess just spontaneously, the computer starts reappearing and the clock,
Sure.
and there, but so those both things are going on at sort of the,
Sure.
simultaneously.
Sure. And this is exactly, and this is a question, this is what the intelligence can do. Intelligence can look at a pile of raw materials and visualize what can be made from it.
Yeah.
And this kind of defines the level of technology, you could say, is, a caveman would look at a lump of copper and say, oh, great, I can make an axe with this, and an electronics technician looks at a lump of copper and say, oh, great, I can make, electronic circuitry with this, but it's the same lump of copper, and someone from some inconceivable technology 1 billion years in the future would look at that lump of copper and say, oh, great, I can make a time machine out of this, or God knows what. But it's the same lump of copper. Lump of copper hasn't changed. It's like, the block of marble when Michelangelo looking at it. It's just a big lump of marble, that's all it is. But it could become all of these things. And when it becomes all these things, it's just a block of marble.
I think, so much of our thinking is kind of binary, is kind of on or off, this or that. And it's really more like the whole quantum thing where things are both on and off at the same time. And once you start to fly your kite there, it's a different trip. I mean, nothing has to come together. It just doesn't matter at all. That whole.
But coming together and not coming together is the same thing. That's the point. Coming together doesn't create anything that wasn't there before it came together. And falling apart doesn't lose anything.
Well, in a way, there's a kind of magic in the possibilities. You take something wooden like a Stradivarius violin. It's just incredibly profound thing that this seeming this existence in form, that it has that form for one out. And but as you say, it's just made up out of the sawdust of nothing. But it's absolutely wonderful that can be.
Yeah, all the infinite elaboration. But in the elaboration, there's nothing has happened. Nothing has been produced. everything falls apart and nothing's been lost. You know, the earth, let's suppose the earth melts down into slag, and all forms, the biosphere, all forms that have ever existed on the earth are just gone. All there is just a big floating bubble of raw material sitting there. Nothing's changed, it's the same thing. That's what it is right now. But the raw material is elaborated in terms of all of these apparent patterns and structures, but nothing new has come into being. As a yogi becomes more and more aware of the nature of radiance, the sense of this becomes more and more palpable. And all the various elaborations that are appearing or not appearing, there becomes less and less of a sense that anything is being gained when elaborations appear, and there's less and less of a sense that anything is lost when they aren't appearing or when they disappear. And then ultimately, at death, it's the same thing. You know, the fantasy is, I'm going to die, it's all going to be over, I'm going to lose everything. You know? But nothing is lost, because what happens at death and what's happening after death is exactly what's happening now. It's not different. It looks different, but it looks different every instant anyway, so that's not an issue. You go to sleep, you don't lose anything. All the elaboration of the waking world completely disappears, but it doesn't feel like a loss, does it? It doesn't feel like, oh no, I'm losing all my stuff is disappearing, it's so terrible. You know, it's still just a sense of absolute completeness. And then you wake up and it's the same fullness. Well, here it is, it's all full. And you go to sleep and here it is, it's all full. And when you die, you will find it's the same thing. Because there are no parts. There's only the primal condition. And even in the event of all this elaboration, that it's still just the primal condition. It hasn't become anything more than the primal condition. This is the ground state right here. And the ground state can look infinitely elaborated, but even when it does so, it doesn't leave itself. It doesn't become more than itself. It is just the ground state.
So I have two jobs, both part-time. One of them is a lot of remote administrative stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm just sort of failing to get things done. But,
Shouldn't have one job, in other words.
right, possibly. I mean, I don't know, the stress that got me to do things is not there.
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, part of me says that's okay, and part of me is like, well, it's not okay, because these are people who are being impacted. It's not really in line with my values, and there's not a question, I just present this to you.
Well,
See what you say.
action comes out of actual nature, and personalities or beings are not coherent. We're a hodgepodge of all sorts of conflicting energies and vectors and desires and energies that aren't particularly well integrated with each other. So there's there's desires, like, they might be described as altruism, or, so a person might be altruistic, but they also might be very self-serving, and they also might be hedonistic, and they also might be, I mean, whatever, right? You could just sort of throw in a bunch of arbitrary divergent qualities. And so it is what it is. And what actually ends up happening is just that there is the net vector of whichever forces are strongest or dominant at the time in that circumstance. And it all takes care of itself. It's all a self-regulating system. And it can't be other than it is until it becomes other than it is. So if you all of a sudden find yourself having a spur of motivation, then all of a sudden maybe you start doing it real well. If not, maybe you find another job or whatever, right? But I mean, that's just real life. But that's no different than any functioning. All functioning is that. We beat ourselves up because there's a pretense that we play favorites with these different energies in ourselves, and we identify with some of them and think of the others as failings or weaknesses or vices. But in actuality, that's just spin doctrine. We're just a composite of all of this mishmash of energy tendencies that happen to be present.
The themes of service and virtue are so pervasive. And somehow.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, in any given case. I mean, bottom line is, you are what you are, not what you'd like to be. And what you are is what controls your functioning, not what you'd like to be. And maybe part of what you are is the desire to be different than you are. That's cool. So that's in the mix too. But it all sorts itself out. And wherever it goes, it's a learning experience. So ultimately, it's a win.
It's an age-old question, but why does oneness pretend to be all these things? Or
It's nature. Can't be answered. Why is it the way it is? Why? I mean, the whole notion of why pretends that it's analyzable. You know, to answer why, you'd have to be able to come up with some analysis, and the pretense is that the analysis would have some accuracy, or else it's just empty noises. And since what this is intrinsically unresolvable, which one can discover by direct experience, then naturally it's unanalyzable, and naturally that question can't be answered. So naturally that question is absolutely meaningless.
Can't really say that it's more one thing than it is infinite differentiation, right?
No. It is what it is, and you know, there's no conflict between differentiation isn't actually differentiation, and oneness isn't actually oneness. They're the same thing from different perspectives, and perspectives, there's an infinity of perspectives, and none of them are final.
It seems like often it's framed that the power is in seeing that all of these things are actually the one thing. Is that just because we're used to seeing?
Yeah, that's simply a remedial exercise. So if you're used to seeing all this elaboration as actual, seeing the way it isn't is a remedial exercise for that perspective. But it's not ultimately truer, because when you have an equal sign, what's on one side and what's on the other side is interchangeable. So if the elaboration equals the simplicity or the wholeness, then they're just named, they're words for each other. And at that point, there's no polarity whatsoever. It's two different words for the same thing. Because perspectives don't actually define anything. The perspectives present maybe a dominant implication, but they don't limit or define what's being, you say, the context, let's say. So from a certain perspective, you can see things as infinitely elaborated, you know, but that doesn't mean that they are that way. It just means that from that perspective, the implication is that that is the case, but that implication doesn't stand up to scrutiny, because if you look more closely at the whole thing, at the whole question of perspective, you discover unresolvability. And once there's unresolvability, you can't tell what's really going on at all. It's just a sort of a dominant implication. But if it doesn't, it's not supported by examination. It's not supported by evidence. And all perspectives are of that nature. All perspectives have an implication, but again, none of them resolve into actually being that way undeniably.
Recently, I've been interested in talks about near-death experiences and also the law of attraction.
Mhm.
And I asked you last Friday if you ever try to manifest things, or I think it's something like that, like do you use thinking or visions or whatever to attract things into your life. And you said, well, you make decisions, but you don't do anything fancy like that. I think you said, why wouldn't anyone use the law of attraction all the time?
But if there was any such thing, have at it. The problem with the law of attraction is the law of repulsion. And they're one and the same
Can't have
thing.
one without the other. Yeah,
Would you care to elaborate?
Well,
I'll do it.
Because the people, I mean, there are people who are, anyways, go ahead, because people kind of say like it's one side of the coin, that you can attract good things to an extent.
you can't, for the simple reason that there are no good things. Everything is an infinity of mixed qualities. You throw a pebble into a pond, and the ripples go every direction. They don't just say I have a pebble and I want to get ripples to the far shore. So I throw them in the pond, and sure enough, ripples get to the far shore. But ripples get to the near shore too, and ripples get to the side shores, because every condition interacts with every other condition. So you get good, you're gonna, whatever you achieve, you're going to achieve a lot. A lot is going to come with that, which is not what you were shooting for. Put it that way.
Everything you achieve.
Yeah. Things aren't simple and linear.
So
And by your very nature, attraction works, again, by nature. So just like functioning works by nature. So you function the way you do because of it's your nature. If you had a different nature, there would be different functioning. You know, you see someone who's a type A personality, a CEO of their own energy company by the time they're 25 or something, that happened because of who they were. And if that's not happening to you, it's because of who you are. So, and that's where attraction really gets into. You can't attract what isn't in your nature to attract. And you are inevitably attracting what is in your nature for you to attract. So you want to know what you're attracting, just look at what's in your life. And it can't be other than that unless you become different. But you're continually becoming different, so it does become other than that. And then you can try and do pretense of, oh, I'm going to attract, whatever. And maybe you can if it's in your nature to be able to do so.
So maybe it goes back to that sweet spot issue, just try to find some groove or inspiration.
Ultimately, that's where successful life comes in, is find the sweet spot, maximize your enjoyment of what's available, maximize your functionality in ways that you find enjoyable, and don't worry too much about what that looks like, and don't expect it to look the way you think it ought to look. I mean, that's basically a recipe for living a successful life. You won't have the life you want to have or you think you should have. You'll have the life you will have. So enjoy it, maximize it, work with it.
How do you maximize or work with something?
For you, you do it by seeing that that's an impossibility. For you do it by doing it.
Basically, it comes down to not arguing with it.
Yeah.
Not arguing with the flow that's right in your face,
Just
if you will.
Yeah. Reality check.
Yeah.
Reality check is the totality of wisdom.
And don't try and make a decision, just see where the hand goes.
Whatever.
Couldn't you also say that in a way you're always getting exactly what you want?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because your nature is your life, and your life is your nature. There's the notion that there's a you with this little thing here, and there's a life which is out there, and there's some sort of complex interrelationship between the two is way simplistic. Nothing like that can actually be found.
I guess in a way, I have a hope that by coming here and doing other so-called spiritual engagements, I'll free up a lot of junk in my system so it can better gravitate towards, it can better self-organize, and have a functional, happy life.
Maybe it will. You're quite young now, and at your stage of life, it's appropriate to be sort of flailing around and trying different things, and pushing. You don't have to have committed or settled down into a way of doing things or a single whatever. So there's that's so by trying things, you make discoveries, and discoveries are potentially useful and valuable.
I tried being an underachiever for the past year and a half. I haven't liked it at all.
Cool. Well, see, that's
you achieved that.
That's an interesting experiment.
So, I don't know.
The law of attraction, you successfully attracted being an underachiever.
Yeah. I was a crazy overachiever before.
Yeah.
Now you're a crazy underachiever, so that's good.
See, that's good. That's good.
Be my best.
But that's very appropriate at your age to have these kinds of experiments.
Appreciate the affirmation.
At your age, on the other hand.
I should just stick to one thing.
Oh.
Try it. Will work.
Is that possible?
No, your problem is you try to stick to one thing.
Do many more things.
So if we have the desire to be a more compassionate person or work on our inner emotional problems or whatever it is, that's just a desire to find the sweet spot maybe. Just to
Well, whatever. I mean, you don't need to qualify it. If that desire is there, it will be acted upon if it's genuine. Genuine desires manifest in the context of other genuine desires that may be conflicting by various degrees. And it doesn't matter, from the point of view of yoga, fundamentally, it doesn't matter what you do or don't do. So becoming self-improvement is great if you're motivated that, or not self-improvement is great. It just doesn't matter either way. Because from the point of view of yoga, the important thing is what it is. And what it is not affected by what happens or doesn't happen. So, probably the most practical strategy in yoga for the yogi is to let go of any investment in what happens or doesn't happen, let go of investment in what you're doing or not doing. And even if there is investment in what you're doing, let go of being invested in that needing to be different. So, in other words, what happens or doesn't happen takes care of itself as an autonomous system, and attends to what that is, attends to the context within which that's happening, because that's where yoga achievement occurs. And so all of allowing oneself to be distracted by all of these, investments in action or investments in trying to be uninvested in action, and all that is just internal gamesmanship, which accomplishes nothing.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I used to achieve a bunch of things, and now I can't seem to find the focus or the energy or whatever to do the same sort of thing. It seems like it's possible to still do the same thing, but it's
You're becoming less naive.
okay. But like there's a holding on to that possibility of, just can get this one thing or a couple of things to change, and in my life I'll be able to get back to the way it seemed.
Yeah, so you're still a little naive.
And there's a lot of energy tied up in that, thinking it should be the way it seemed to be before.
Sure.
Yeah.
And all that is just a distraction in terms of anything genuine, in terms of genuine achievement. Immaturity is investment. Immaturity is importance. And the process of maturing is a diminishment of investment and a loss of importance, which accompanies seeing the actual value, seeing the true value and the true importance, which is not dependent upon circumstances, is not dependent upon achievement or non-achievement and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I noticed that recently, Monday I went on 2 dates. I thought they went reasonably well. I was happy about that. And then next day, text messaged them and they weren't responding. And then I was unhappy about that, right? And then we both eventually didn't respond, one positively, one negatively, I guess. And I found though that there was a strange thing of like there was a sense that the happiness was, or that there was a sort of belief that the happiness was circumstantial, right? But at the same time there was like the experience of it not being, right?
Right.
And like the sense of that there's like this interpretation that comes into play, right? But then there's something that's aside from that interpretation or beyond it or whatever, more fundamental, that is like the happiness is in some sense it's always there.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is as one moves into maturity, there's a coexistence of states of relative conditions of relative immaturity and relative maturity, and just a matter of proportionality. When one's immature, then the immature perspectives are really dominant and really there, and the mature perspectives, if they're there at all, sort of in the background, these little things. But as one matures, then the balance shifts, and there becomes more and more power to the mature perspective, which is aware that in the midst of all of the activity and pursuits in life, there's nothing really essential that's gained or lost in all of that. And so the sense of urgency or investment or importance that all that activity seems to hold gradually diminishes in the mature perspective, even if there's some degree of the immature perspective still hanging around from habit. And again, it's not a matter of of suppressing these kinds of investments and ambitions. It's a matter of seeing that they're unimportant one way or the other. So the nature of the personality will tend to enact itself behaviorally. But as one matures, that one's less judgmental about that in terms of thinking one's ought to be different than one's behavior ought to be different than it is. And also one's less concerned with success or failure in those areas, because one sees that, well, it's all just your life and your life is here. Successes and failures don't diminish the presence of your life, which is your being. And this becomes more, and again, this, let's say it seemingly gradually or progressively becomes more and more obviously the case. Well, it actually looks like it's real close to quitting time, so unless anyone has a last minute zinger to close on. Well, by the power vested in me, I'm going to take a sip of beer.